Happy Sunday, everybody. This is QCQ. You can just call me Queen for short. I use they them pronouns. We start every single thing off with talking about pronouns because it's important. By making pronouns commonplace as an introduction, we make it easier for people in the gender diverse community to say their pronouns without having to worry about outing themselves. We are doing episode 2 of Queen City Q. We are going to be talking about gay movies, gay podcasts, a whole bunch of gay stuff, which I can say in the stream. I just can't put it in the title or else Twitch blocks it. Our guest today is Corwin. I just call them Corwin because words are hard. So we're going to bring them in right away. That's pretty much it. If I seem really tired and out of it today, it's because I just woke up from a nap because I'm a professional. Without further ado, we're going to bring in Corwin here and start this show up. I hope everybody's having a good day, though. Hi, Corwin. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am good.
I love that the stream is a little delayed, so I was like watching it and then just saw myself pop up. It was great. Wonderful timing. I love
Yes.
it. But I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, DL. So just to start out the podcast, do you mind just introducing yourself, give us a little bit of details about you, letting us know your pronouns, all that wonderful Jasmine Taz?
Yeah, sorry, the light is like weird today. Um, I am Corwin. I go by he, they, and the main thing, I'm also a streamer here, as you can see, and the main thing I do is a podcast on queer film every other Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. Professionally, I am in the field of theater. I have a degree in theater performance, and before COVID, I worked in like theater management, like sales and things like that. That's me.
Perfect. So you do have a podcast as well, and you do the
Yes.
what is your next one? Just so we.
The next one is not this upcoming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that.
Okay.
So we stream it on Twitch, and then it's released it's released like the following Monday on like Spotify, Apple, like all those places that you like, listen to podcasts. And we've been doing it for 2 years now. So we've got a pretty expansive list of episodes.
All right. As always, if anybody has any questions for me, Corwin, anything like that, just put them in chat. If it's offensive, I just won't answer it and probably put you on timeout. So don't act up, Thomas.
Thomas.
But we're gonna move on. So you watch, you watch a lot of queer movies, obviously, with your podcast. Do you have like a top tier list of like queer movies that you enjoy watching or like talking about or anything like that?
Top tier list. So I always there's this one movie by an Australian director called Monster Pies that is absolutely heartbreaking. And there's another one called You Should Meet My Son. It's very southern. It's about a mom trying to find her son a husband because she just finds out he's gay. So she's like trying to get him a man because he just broke up with his boyfriend. And it's a wonderful, like, feel-goodish movie to watch. So like those two are like ones I always go back and I'll watch again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like Love, Simon is absolutely top tier for me because it is important in when it came out and sort of what it promoted cinematically or in the film industry or whatever. And then, yeah, those are the three that I go to a lot. But then there's also like, beautiful movies that everyone should see, like The Birdcage or Moonlight, like those big ones.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not gonna lie. There was that stint during the like '90s, 2000s where they used to make all those gay movies that were by queer people for queer people with only queer people, and I absolutely hated them.
So like, is that like that's the birdcage for you?
No,
You don't like the bird?
Birdcage was
Okay,
like Birdcage was before that, and the Birdcage had Robin Williams, and it was like absolute perfection. Like that was
so
great.
good.
And then like after that came those like they were like indie budgets, and like it started with another gay movie, and it's like, oh okay, we're making fun of like, what's it called? Like American Pie and stuff. Like I'm into this. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then they all started being like that, and you had stuff like it was like stuff where it was like all about bears, and like it was just all about the hookup
Mm-hmm.
culture. And it's like, okay, we have plots better than like being gay, wanting to hook up, and then being sad because we did like somebody else hooked up with them. But like everything was about like the never ending quest for butt stuff. And I was like, okay, we have better stories than this. We really do.
We have more things to show and tell.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I think Trick was one of those that
Yeah.
came out in the 90s. We haven't done that one yet for the podcast, but eventually. Uh, my co-host is straight, and he really wanted to do all those another gay movie, and God, what's the one? There's like five or six of them, and they're very raunchy. They're just like
And
those.
they have like, and they're series. They're not just one. They're like,
Yeah, 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 it's a lot of them. My co-host really wanted to do those, like as the movies. So I was like, we're not gonna do another gay movie until like our first year anniversary. And we did do the Eating Out series. We did
yeah,
the Eating Out series before that, and that's another one that was like, that American Pie kind of feel to it.
yeah. DL mentioned a movie Moonlight, which I have never seen, but like is on my list. I just have to find it. Um, you know what movie I that like speaking of movies that won an Oscar, another movie that won an Oscar that I think didn't deserve it was Brokeback Mountain.
I finally watched, like, I had seen most of Brokeback Mountain. Like, I hadn't seen it all the way through.
Yeah,
But I'd seen, like, the big pieces of it. And I finally saw it, like, sitting down one session all the way through for the podcast. You know, was it for it was a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. And I did not I'm not gonna watch that movie again.
mm-mm.
I was very angry at it.
Yeah. Like I remember watching it, and I watched it once. I was like, well, that was enough, and I had to do it in
Yeah.
sections. Like I actually did it in sections where like I was like, well, I got through my like first 45 minutes, and like I don't know how you took a whole bunch of my favorite actors and made a movie bad with them in it. um,
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I understand the importance that it had in the time, because it was like a huge blockbuster movie. Um, well, not block, but it was a huge movie, a huge budget with like all these big actors. Um, and it told a story that needed to be told at the time, but it hasn't really aged that well. I feel it's it's just one of those that I'm like, ugh, I don't want to
I
watch
don't think
it.
it even aged that well between like being released in theaters and coming out on DVD. That's how bad it was.
It's just gay trauma. It's just gay trauma.
Yeah,
It's putting gay trauma on the screen for everyone to watch and be like, oh, I feel bad about this.
yeah,
That's like what it is.
yeah. And I don't think people understand that. They're like when they watch that, they're like, "Oh, this is so sad." I'm like, "That's just like life for a lot of queer people."
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and then I didn't like Heath Ledger's character, and I just don't. It's just a lot, just a lot.
Yeah. God, that movie was trash. I think I have a copy of it, and like one day I kind of want to do a sacrificial burning of it. Because like I've moved so
Do
many
it.
times, and it just like happens to always get into the DVD box.
I mean, it's important. It is important because, and it also, the funniest thing about that movie is that they had such like a They instead of the queer baiting, that movie was like, we're gonna straight bait. We're gonna make all the ads like these guys are with their wives, and then that's not the movie at all. Um, so that's one good thing it did. It was like, hey, this definitely isn't a gay movie. This is not a gay movie. And then people go and watch it, and they're like, what the fuck? They ain't cowboys.
Well, the Cowboys, but
Which is it. So the movie did that well.
yeah.
But it's 20 years later, or I don't know when that fucking movie came out. I should know.
Hmm.
I
Big
don't know
Eden.
dates.
Have you heard of the movie Big Eden?
I have heard of it. We have not done that
Mhm.
on the podcast yet. I've just heard the name. I know nothing about it. I
Gotcha.
think someone has tweeted at us about it. I need to get better about like watching a lot of those.
um,
I mean, we could just watch what like we finally got to a couple on the list that were people that are asking us to do, including another one that you might have some thoughts on, Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
I mean, it's like not a gay movie, but like it's
It's not a
real,
gay movie.
like low key. It's got some
It's
homosexual vibes to it. That's for sure.
yeah.
I blame
Brokeback was
Johnny
05.
Depp.
I was close to 10 years or 20 years ago. It's
Yeah,
close, almost 20 years.
yeah. I blame Johnny Depp in his crop top for why Nightmare on Elm Street became like a queer classic.
I mean, I watched it and I was like, I can see why people think this is gay. But also like it's a straight movie.
Yeah.
I need it to be more explicitly gay,
I mean,
not just like the villain.
yeah. There's a lot of movies that kind of have that. Um, that crop top was a blessing of future crop tops.
It
Correct.
really, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
That the moment Johnny Depp became a queer icon by dying in a bed.
Oop.
I mean, the blood fountain was pretty iconic back in the days. So, um, and then they like in the remake, I hated that they didn't show the like deaths in the dream sequence. They just showed the like effects of it. It was like that's not
Hmm.
fun. Like the reason people watched Nightmare on Elm Street was to watch the over the top like like dream death sequences. Um,
Yeah.
I know me and you've talked about other queer movies that we really like. Speaking of which, my favorite one to date probably is Pride, which is about
Oh,
which is a documentary.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You sent that one to me, to just suggest like that one as the one that you watch, and I'm like, oh, we already did it.
yeah.
It's yeah, that's definitely up there for like movies, just because it is based on real stuff, and it's just so good.
And I regularly sing that like every woman is a lesbian at heart on a regular basis. But it's a really good movie. It's about how the unions for it's the miners, I believe,
Yep.
in the UK was supported by like the queer movement. And they basically were there for each other, and in return, when queer people were fighting for their rights, the unions kind of turned around and supported queer people, and it was kind of that
Hmm.
wonderful synergy, and showed how a bunch of people who were kind of in that stereotype of like being in an anti-queer space ended up changing their views and working with, which was awesome, and it was just done so well. It's got such range to it. It's got comedy. It'll like make you cry. It'll make you question stuff
Hmm.
about yourself, and it'll make you look into history. And I think, in all honesty, like a good queer movie will make you take a step back of like what was in the content and want to look into it more.
Yeah.
And
It did so well with that.
yeah, and I think that's a problem you find in a lot of those queer movies that I was talking about from like the late 90s, 2000s. Um, all they were about was basically like how softcore porn can we make this movie before it like actually has to have an X rating.
Hmm.
But you never really question anything. You didn't learn anything. You didn't want to learn anything afterwards. you just basically saw like a bunch of like vulgar humor or like people's like very very surface level traumas about like, oh no, why doesn't he love me, I only put out for him 800 times and told him to treat me like a piece of garbage, and now for some reason he doesn't like respect me and treats me like a booty call. um so then like you didn't want to be like, oh, like this part of queer history or like this part of queer life I want to learn about, because they were so surface level about everything.
Yeah. I mean, and there is a place for those movies because,
Yeah.
like, you know, you have a lot of straight rom coms that are it's just fluff. It's nothing but like sitting there and watching it and like having a good time. So there's definitely a place for those, and I'm glad those exist for that.
Yeah.
It's just it's not going to have the same impact as, you know, a movie like Pride or
Mm-hmm.
you know, Moonlight winning an Oscar and like just emphasizing uh, these beautiful things and making people want to understand more about queer history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
And like one movie that we can't really discuss much on here, that's kind of I think like a perfect balance of like making you want to learn things and also just like sitting down and enjoying, is Hedwig and the Angry Inch. But we're going to talk about that later on your
Yes.
podcast, which that
Yes.
soundtrack is amazing.
Hmm.
um
Have you seen? There's another one. Something about Pluto. I don't. I don't know. It's got Liam Neeson in it. Hold on. Let me look up this movie. Um, there's another movie that's very has kind of the same vein as Hedwig and the Angry Inch. It's just not, you know, it doesn't have the musical part of it.
mhm.
Um, I'm pretty sure it's got Liam Neeson in it.
Ooh.
Let me see. We can talk about other things while I try to find
Yeah.
this. Um, Breakfast on Pluto. That's what it's
Okay.
called.
And then I love how then there's like a really solid gay movie that doesn't have any musical aspects of it. We like make it a musical. Like Birdcage got turned into a musical. Um, what's it called? Kinky Boots got turned into
Kinky
a
Boots.
musical.
God,
Um,
I love Kinky Boots.
it's like these
I like
movies
the
are.
musical more because I like hearing the music. It's
Yeah.
so good.
It's like I just love like the gay reaction is like, this movie is so good. It's got great content. It's serious. It does all this stuff. You know what we can do? Let's make it gayer. Let's make it a musical on Broadway.
First Wives Club, they made a musical too. It didn't do well. But they made it a musical. Devil Wears Prada is a musical.
Mean
They're
Girls is a
just, you
musical,
know,
which I actually
Mean
have
Girls.
I have the vinyl for Mean Girls in my room, like just over there. It's one of the first vinyls I ever bought. Um, Beetlejuice, I bought the vinyl for.
Oh,
The
Beetlejuice. That one's so
Beetlejuice
good.
vinyl is beautiful. It's like a black swirl,
Hmm.
so when it's in the thing, it's like boo doo 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 doo. Um, the other
Ooh.
musical I really want is a Heathers, but the only version they have of Heathers
I.
musical
Mhm.
is the recording I don't like as much.
Oh, I I really enjoyed Heather's. I saw a production here in Chicago of that one. Um, I didn't get to see Mean Girls. I was so excited to see Six, but we like all closed before
Mm.
before that came. Um, and First Wives Club was before my time, but I heard it was terrible from good sources.
Six is surprisingly really good, considering the premise is kind of like so out
Mm,
there.
yeah. Um, yeah, that one. I was very excited for that one. So hopefully, like, I'll see it one day. And I've seen Kiki Boots like 4 times. Literally every single time it's in Chicago, I go and see it.
Yeah, the premise of Sex is literally Henry VIII's wives in a pop girl group competing for like who was the best wife slash who should be the leader of their pop group. It is the most ridiculous premise, but I thoroughly enjoy it.
It's so good.
It's stupid and it's beautiful.
Yeah, listen to the soundtrack. It's just it's absolutely beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, the music is so catchy and like sticks in your head and everything.
Um,
It's definitely one of those like it was getting big. It was huge before Broadway and everything shut down. So hopefully, like when everything opens back up, when the theater industry opens back up, it'll still be going.
yeah. Um, the thing that I found like lately, I've been getting really into like the newer musicals that have been based off of movies, which like people have been like, oh, they need original concepts. Like these are kind of original because if you see the musicals
Hmm.
compared to the movies, they are quite different. Like even Wicked is the musical versus the book have like nothing in common.
Yeah.
um, um, but they make me think of so many like great numbers I want to do in drag. Um, like I cannot wait for the next Disney show to come down so I can perform Dead Mom from Beetlejuice the musical.
Oh my God.
Like it's literally an entire song. It's like a power ballad about having a dead parent, and I'm like, this is so appropriate for Disney. It's like
Yeah.
part of like the Disney requirements. Like you want to be a Disney princess, make sure you have at least one dead parent. If you don't
Hmm.
have a dead parent, be estranged from them.
Yeah. Yep. 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 That's that's required. It's the trauma that everyone can, sort of relate to.
Yeah, it's like, hi, do you want to be royalty in Disney? I want you to be an orphan or orphan light.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like one Disney princess who has both parents and has a healthy relationship with both of them.
Um, I literally can't. Uh, I mean, sort of Mulan, sort of.
But Mulan's not technically by definition a princess because she never marries into royalty. She's just
That.
badass.
You're right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
and like see that's the thing is like even Rapunzel doesn't know her parents until the end of the movie.
hmm
Princess Aurora has both parents, doesn't know them till the end of the movie.
because she's
Ariel,
been asleep the whole
yeah,
time.
Ariel, mama dead. um, Snow White, both parents dead. Cinderella, both parents dead.
Tiana, uh,
Tiana has both parents. That's
I
like
thought one of them
no, her
died, and she
dad's
was
dead. Her dad's dead because that's
yeah,
part of the story. She wants to open the restaurant to
yeah,
do that. Yeah, and like Walt Disney did lose his mom. But I mean, movies have been made since then.
yeah. Um,
Hercules did like has his adoptive parents, but like only
yeah,
really knows his
is it,
dad and his mom.
I like that we're
Yeah,
considering Hercules a princess, though.
I mean, isn't he?
Um, he is. He is. Um, God, what are the other ones? Um, Snow White.
Parents dead.
Does she? Yeah, dead. Um,
I want to like go through a list and just see like how many Disney princesses parents are alive.
Simba, dad died
Dad
mid
died
movie
in front of him.
in front of him.
Bambi, mama shot.
Oh, not the Bambi. No.
Probably by Gaston.
Probably by Gaston. Belle, no mom.
No, mom.
No mom.
I actually
Um,
really like what they did in the live action movie with her mom, how they like wrote it into the story and showed that like her mom died of the plague and the reason why they're like
oh,
the reason why her and her father are so like socially advanced compared to everybody in the village is because they left living in Paris during the plague to this small town where they'd be safe in the play because there wasn't as
Oh,
many people. Which, like, if you didn't catch on based off of the, like, 5-10 minutes they did in the musical in the old house, they were talking about the plague.
I haven't seen the remake. I did not. I did not watch it. Mainly because I was so angry at them being like, Disney finally put a gay character in here, and it's like Gaston's henchman.
Okay, LeFou, though, is like, super low-key gay.
Yeah, I
Even
know,
in
but
the
it was just
original.
it was like such a it just felt like such like a slap in the face a little bit. And I mean it's the same with like them putting really makes me so angry in Avengers Endgame where one of the Russo brothers plays a gay man in the therapy group with Captain America.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, we finally have gay representation in Avengers. And it's like, no, you have gay Avengers. Like, just
Yeah.
have them be their source material.
Well, I mean,
The fuck?
technically, like, WandaVision introduces the first, like, canonly queer character, but we don't get to that part of their storyline, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with, like, like Quicksilver is not straight, uh, right? Am I wrong in that? Now that like I'm saying things, I'm like, oh shit, is my Marvel knowledge lacking?
I don't remember.
And they just like killed him. There's nothing there for him. Um, and Loki is very queer,
Mm-hmm.
um, like you said, and instead of doing like any of these handful of characters that we have that are not straight, Valkyrie's not straight. Um, they're just like, oh, here's a Russo brother, one of the movie makers. He's gonna do this part himself. You can't even get a fucking gay man in the movie. You can't even get a gay actor to go and do this little
isn't
bit part.
isn't
You
one of
gotta
the
get one of the Russo brothers themselves just to sit here and talk about being a gay man and losing his partner doing the snap, but you can't. You can't get a fucking gay actor to do that.
I mean,
You have a straight ass man doing that, a straight white man doing that.
I thought one of the Russo brothers actually was gay.
That no,
Oh, well,
not confirmed, not out.
fuck me then.
Which is okay if he does identify as queer, and is doing that, great. Um,
But also, you're a side character.
Also your side character, so maybe not the best representation, but also like that's fine if you're in the closet, but it is more impactful for you to get someone that is openly queer to do
Yep.
something like that. Like love everyone that doesn't feel safe being open in the public, especially if they're famous, because like that is a lot of stress. But if you're gonna have like a moment like that in the movie and you want it to this moment where Disney's first like openly gay Marvel character, please have an actual queer person play that role that is openly queer.
Yeah.
And even if you're in the closet, you're still an actual queer person, obviously.
Yeah.
But have someone, because that person is going to be impactful for the younger generation. It's also going to be impactful for everyone that is in the closet, not able to be themselves. So they can see someone that like, represents them. That's the point of it, not this person that is identifying publicly as straight.
Yep. I mean, could you imagine being a child again, and having a legitimate like queer hero to look up to?
Yeah, it would be absolutely incredible. And not allowing comic book characters that are canonically queer in the comics be themselves in the movies, or be legitimized with their queerness in the movies, just kind of takes that away.
Yeah.
And that is my big issue with the Marvel Disney universe.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I definitely feel they're starting to go in the right direction, but I'm like, you're in
Yeah.
phase 4, and now you're like, okay, four's our lucky number. We're gonna put in just like a little bit of gay in this episode,
little sprinkle.
little sprinkle, opposed to just being like, okay, here's like this person, like when you watch Endgame, a lot of the stuff they talk about is like their relationships and the people who are left behind and stuff like that. And you're telling me out of all those heroes, out of all the people involved, not a single damn one of them really has to deal with, the farther side of it, except for one person in a like support group for
Support
five
group with Steve
seconds.
Yeah. And not to mention like Bucky Barnes himself
Mhm.
is completely based off of a gay Jewish man,
Mhm.
and they don't even have like they just take away those two identifying factors. They're like gay Jewish. Let's get those out of there.
Let's give you brown hair.
Um,
That's good enough, right? Brown long hair. Yep.
ridiculous.
Maybe they'll go into it in the upcoming series. We'll see.
I'm like, hopefully, because like you literally have. I mean, you did WandaVision. They did introduce Billy, who is Wiccan, and Wiccan himself is very gay and married and everything. So like, I know they're going into Young Avengers, and they're casting for that and everything. So like, what are they gonna do with that?
Yeah.
I hope they do it justice.
Yeah. By the
They
way,
better.
if anybody gets mad at me for spoilers, they introduced Billy in the third episode, so don't get mad.
Yeah.
No being angry in the comments. If you wanted to watch the series, it's all out. You would have started by now. You would at least know that Billy's there. Also, it's in the promos. um,
Yeah, he's there. I'm just like questioning the Quicksilver thing
you're still
because I
looking
think
up.
I got it wrong.
Um,
I'm looking it up now. It's Korg. Korg is the one that
okay.
is gay.
That being said, like, have you finished WandaVision yet?
I absolutely finished it. It was so good.
So
I
this is not a spoiler, but when you finish that one, if you don't cry at least one point during the finale, you're a monster. Like you're a legitimate sociopath.
it is absolutely yeah. I watched it with my roommate, and it's so good. Um, the one I was getting confused with Quicksilver is North Star. North Star is a
Yes.
gay character that's I always get them fucking confused.
And they're
Um,
Canadian.
yeah, they're Canadian. Um, yeah, so Quicksilver's bi. Thank you.
Perfect.
Corgan Hero from Planet Hulk. I love that. Um, yeah, so they have like legit gay characters
Hmm.
they have characters that they've already introduced that are gay as hell, and they're like, nah, bruh. We ain't gonna talk about that.
But
We
yeah.
gotta ignore that.
So yeah, I was watching the finale of WandaVision, and during the like part which like I don't even have to explain, I just have to say like during that part, um, I'm like sitting there like holding a blanket, being like, and my roommate's like watching it, like playing League, being like, oh, it's like how are you so okay with this?
It's just so good. Uh, I yeah. It's one of some of my favorite moments and characters introduced so far in the entire like Marvel universe. I absolutely love Wiccan.
Yeah.
So that
Well, like
Billy being like brought into the universe, I'm like, oh,
whenever somebody does the like, if you could be a mutant with anybody's powers, who's do you have? I'm like Wiccans.
Wiccan. If I could play Wiccan in the movie, 100% I would. But I don't look like him. But that's okay.
I can change.
Change. Give me some of those personal trainers.
Chris
I
Pratt
can do
changed.
it.
Chris Pratt
I'll
changed to
just
be.
shave. I can do it. I can do it. I promise.
If you
I'm
want more,
so good.
if you want more full hair, I'll get plugs. I swear.
I swear.
I mean, Chris Pratt changed for his role, and then like kept changing and became somebody I don't like as much. But whatever.
I mean, I can change a lot. They're not gonna make me not gay. So.
Right.
Ah.
um, I just like love watching all the people in the Marvel movies who just like go from like regular to like super super jacked, and then they'll be like, And then you'll see those commercials that'll come up on Facebook or whatever, and they're like, "You can change just like them." I'm like, they literally get paid to not do anything but get jacked for this movie role until it's released. Fuck
They get
off.
they get paid to not do anything but get jacked, and they also have like nutritionists
Yeah,
and personal trainers and all of this stuff that is all like set up for them, and it's a
yeah.
very rigid process that they go through,
Like,
and then they become,
you see those people, they're like, I just do it all
ripped.
for I just do it all for my home gym, and they open up the door and it looks like a like Gold's Fitness or whatever in there, and they're like, you're like, yeah, I totally have all that equipment in my house, thanks.
Seen a lot of that during the pandemic where they're like, I just wake out at home, and it's like, you have an entire gym in your home.
You have a gym for 20 people for yourself. You don't even
I
have.
have literal 5 feet that I could put down a yoga mat. That's
Yeah.
what I got.
I can barely play Wii Fit. I don't have that much room.
I keep throwing the Wii controller into the TV.
Now I gotta buy another TV.
Another TV and another Wii controller. They're both broken.
But yeah, like I'm super excited for it. If I can give you any piece of advice, just bite the bullet. Watch WandaVision now. Watch it now.
Oh, just watch it now, so that if you have anything that hasn't been spoiled yet, you get to watch it firsthand, because in the coming months you will literally learn everything, because people are still going to be talking about that show. It's so good.
And I mean, I've looked in the history, and I think they said WandaVision's become one of the most popular shows. Like it's even beat The Mandalorian.
Oh, I absolutely believe that. And can we talk about just how brilliant Catherine Hahn is? Just,
I love her. Um,
I absolutely adore her in every sense of the word.
and like it's so nice to see Catherine Hahn get into the limelight because she's in so many movies that people
So many
watch
things.
that they just like completely dismiss her because she's that good at like changing her style depending on what she's in. Like
Hmm.
when I had to tell people, I'm like, she's in 30, like, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Hmm.
Um, and
I don't remember that movie at all.
you would never recognize her because she looks completely different. She acts completely different, but she's always been the like queen of like facial emoting, in my opinion.
Oh, mm-hmm. And God, I love her as Jen Barkley in Parks and Rec. Just her Jen Barkley is so fucking good. Uh, and my roommate even mentioned the in the last episode of WandaVision. No spoilers in anything, but there's like a moment that she has. You know the moment. He said that's absolutely a master class in acting and in like being in control of your face and your emotions, especially like how you emote with your eyes. Just so
Oh,
good.
are you talking about the part at the end?
Yeah, the part at the end.
Yeah, and like you can like the facial
Mm-hmm.
emotion she has versus
Mm-hmm.
the emotion
Mm-hmm.
specifically in her eyes are completely the
Mm-hmm.
opposite. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just
So good.
insane. It's insane. And like, I remember watching that and being like, holy crap, like, I can see this emotion in your eyes, but this emotion on your face. And like,
If I
the talent that takes.
if I could one day have that level of talent in front of a camera, I will be amazed. That's all I want in life. That's
Yeah.
all I want,
Yeah.
really.
Like, I'm hoping she's becomes more regular in this series, like the whole Marvel
Oh,
universe. I'm hoping she gets more roles, period,
mm-hmm.
because she's amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. I just want to. I just every single time there's like an actor or an actress that like I just really love him. Just like I just want to give him a hug one day. I
Yeah.
just want to give him a hug and be like, hello.
No, I'm awful with names, but Captain Marvel. It's like, who plays her?
Um,
Brie.
Brie Larson.
Yeah, Brie Larson. Um, the amount of people that I'm like, by the way, did you remember that she sings really well and she's in Scott Pilgrim?
Scott Pilgrim. It's my favorite song.
Yeah,
It's
which
it's great.
ironically she is in with Chris Evans, who she's like essentially replacing in the Marvel verse.
Oh well, just in the role of captain.
Well, the thing is, like, he's kind of like the leader of the Avengers, and she's supposed to become the new leader of the Avengers. So she's literally like,
Yeah.
um, it's weird how many of these people have been in comic book movies and just like don't stop being in comic book movies. It's like you get typecast. You're like, hey, you know comic book literature. Guess what? You're in all of them now.
Well,
Thank you
Chris
for
Evans was in Scott Pilgrim, and then he was in Fantastic Four,
hmm
and then he was in Marvel.
and Push.
Like Push, yeah, he's just in all of them. You need a comic book character brought to life. Chris Evans.
Yep.
There you go. He exists.
Exactly. He's in Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer?
He
my God.
technically plays Loki at one point.
Yeah, he does technically play Loki at one point. He did a very good job at that too. Laura.
So like Chris Evans, it's like you want a comic book character, we got this guy, and then you can have who else? Ryan Reynolds has played multiple comic book characters. He's played Deadpool, who I don't consider Deadpool. um, he played
You don't like Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool?
not the first one.
Oh yeah, the first one no. Not the first, not in the Wolverine movie first Deadpool. Not
He's
that
played Green
one.
Lantern.
He did play Green Lantern. Yep.
Um,
Ryan and Chris.
yeah. Who else has done multiple comic book roles? It's the three of them so far.
Yeah, Brie with Captain America and or not Captain Marvel, Jesus, and Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. But I mean, like, there's definitely a few that have been around the block.
Yeah, I have no idea. No idea. They just keep finding these wonderful people.
Right.
First Deadpool, bad Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds was also in Blade.
Uh, oh yeah, he was. Oh my.
Chris Evans was in Losers. Yep. So like,
hmm
they are just like, sign me up. I would love to see Chris Evans now that like Captain America, we're not going to be seeing as much come back as the Human Torch for no reason whatsoever.
I yeah, that also made me mad. Like that made me so
he was
he
a
doesn't age.
he was
He
a
doesn't age normally. Like why? What? This is stupid.
he was a good
They're writing him off as stupid.
he's a good like I like the original Fantastic Four series that was released. Like I like the
Oh
casting.
yeah,
I like Jessica Alba as Susan. Like I liked it. And everybody's like, it was trash. I'm like, it was not trash. You're trash.
that was before the comic book characters were big movies,
Yeah. Um,
so everyone's like hypercritical of them.
and I remember when they released the casting for the new one, I was legitimately mad at the casting. And I was one of the people who like was mad about the fact that like the Human Torch and his father were black and Susan Storm was white, but not because of the like fact that they were. My problem was the fact that Susan Storm wasn't black, because a big portion in the Fantastic Four is the fact that because Johnny and Susan are biological brother and sister, it's easier for them to find stuff about like how the gamma rays affected their DNA because they have relatives to compare to. So by making them adopted siblings, you get rid of a huge part of the story canon. And I was so mad. And I was like, make Susan black.
Yeah, just make her black.
Like,
Come on.
all these people are like, oh, they like cast him as black, and like I'm like that part's not the problem. The problem is they're adopted. Like they have to be biological siblings. Go fuck yourself. Make Susan black.
Yeah,
Make half the Fantastic Four not white. That would be brilliant. Please do.
I would watch it.
Yep.
I don't even know. I know I watched the new Fantastic Four. I did not. I did not remember it.
I like when I think back of it, it definitely becomes static noise. It's like, oh yeah, I remember they get in the ship, they get hit by sunblasts, and then it's like, and then there's the end credits.
Yeah, I'm like I don't remember anything. Don't remember it. I was the one that played um the one that played the rock guy.
Mm-hmm.
Was he the same one from the first movie? I don't know. Anytime I can imagine the CGI, it's the exact same person.
No, it was not.
But that's just, yep. So my memory for that movie is gone. It's gone.
Does anyone know if the new X-Men is out? X-Men. I don't think so. Like, I think the Rise of the
Um,
Phoenix was the last one they've done.
which one was the last one they did?
Rise of the Phoenix or whatever. Where they are.
They actually released another little one, I think. It had that dude in it that looks like the dude in Sabrina
Oh, New Mutants.
and Riverdale. Yeah, New
New
Mutants.
Mutants,
They
I
did release
believe
that one. I
that
watched that
one
on a plane.
that one came out and it was super super low key. Like, did not get the trailer time it deserved.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it until looks like dude. It does narrow it down. There is Jonathan Whitesell looks exact. There's another actor that looks exactly like Jonathan Whitesell, and that's the actor that's in New Mutants.
Yeah. But yeah, New Mutants was like a choice. Like, not the movie itself, but like how they like went about it, where they're like, it's done. No, it's not. But yes, it is. But no. But yes. And they put all this like time into promoting it, and then they're like, okay, but now we're gonna delay it for 4 years, and instead of releasing it in theaters, we're gonna release it on a streaming service. Hello.
It's Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things. The Stranger Things boy is in it. The brother.
Like, they did not do that justice.
No, I didn't even know it was coming out. I went and watched. I was on a plane and I saw like it was like, oh, go to this website and you can watch free movies and stuff. And I went on there and it was just like, oh, New Mutants, watch this. And I was like, oh, of course, I'll watch that.
Right? Um,
It was okay.
but yeah, it could have definitely been handled considerably better than it was.
Yeah, wasn't gay enough for me.
1 second here. I just need to deal with something here. Um, I hope. But yeah, like
uh,
there's a lot of stuff that Marvel could have done better. And like the thing is, Marvel is actually really really good for queer representation in the comics.
in the comics. I mean, because you have so many, like, so many comics that have a lot of that as they're like, this is representative of this. Like, X-Men are they're representative of, like, homosexuality and stuff like that. Like, there's all these, like, tie-ins and stuff. So, for the comics to do so much justice to underrepresented people, and then the movies to be like, no, we're whitewashing everything,
Right. And I mean,
and having it all like straight as well.
I mean,
It
they
bugs me.
they even straightened up their outfits, to be honest. Because I mean, think of the originals where it was like, do you want to see men in spandex? Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the original, they're like, no, they've got these polyurethane suits that like don't show off as much because we have to be like a family friendly station. And I'm like, come on, Batman and Robin had the nipples.
The nipples.
The nipples that like any like young child who was questioning was like, I like men now.
Let me tell you, I did watch Batman and Robin growing up, the one with Poison Ivy, with Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, and yup, Chris O'Donnell. Thank you so much.
Also, where did
Learned a
he
lot
go?
about myself.
I miss him.
Bat nipples.
And I know I'll get a lot of flack for this, but Batman and Robin is one of the greatest Batman movies.
I love
Period.
it. It was the first one I watched, so it's mine. Oh.
1 second. We're gonna have a quick little timeout here. Just 1 second here. So for all of you who are coming in here and trying to like make this space your own, you can kindly go fuck yourself. There is already a super straight movement. It's called basically living in today's society. Um, if you're needing a straight pride, go outside. It's the world's made for you. Um, we're gonna give them a timeout, give them some chances to learn a little bit, and if they keep acting up, then we'll worry about banning them.
It's
Um,
just like, history itself has been, dominated by straightening out people. You
yeah,
have ancient civilizations that are very gay, and archaeologists are like, they were good friends.
yeah. There's like like there'll be like a barn where there's literally like a guy naked on top of another guy, and their like legs are tangled, and they're like roommates.
Roommates. Oh my god, they were roommates.
So for those of you who
It's
are coming in here wanting to cause a mess, talking about why we're not talking about like straight stuff, we are talking about straight stuff
hmm
already. We're just highlighting the queer stuff because the queer stuff doesn't get a lot of recognition in this world because the world wasn't made for us. It was made for um,
yeah, and
heteronormativity.
like it specifically wasn't, and that's why so many people resonate with like we touched on it earlier, horror movies,
Hmm.
because a lot of horror movies were queer coded, or a lot of horror characters and villains and stuff were queer coded. So that's like where a lot of gay people saw traits that they felt related to them,
Hmm.
were in these villains. So we have this whole dynamic of people thinking just because they're gay, they're monsters.
Yep.
And that's a whole can of worms there.
Hmm.
But horror cinema itself did this queer coding, so a lot of gay people tend to flock towards it because there's our representation. It's not explicit, but there it is.
Yep.
Um, so you've got, I mean, there are like hundreds, not hundreds. There are dozens of podcasts talking about horror films that are by queer people, because of that.
Yep. Um, and like exactly, people guy. Which, by the way, I adore your name. It's like when
Hit
you
people
look without
guy.
when you look without that lens, the history is very different. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, as you said, about like horror movies and queer people. One, the fact that like queer people are almost generally in a state of fear in their daily lives because they are worried about things like losing their jobs, losing their families, getting beat up. Like we're in a constant state of fear growing up to the point that like it becomes commonplace. So horror is almost a little bit comforting.
hmm
Also, there was a thing that was started of like there was two general roles for a queer person in movies. It was either to die by the end, so bury your gays, or that was inherently like bad horror evil person vibes led towards the queer. That's why you find a lot of like the 80s 90s cinema and stuff like that, your bad guys were effeminate
hmm
because they were trying to reinforce that stereotype that like, oh, you want to be a bad person, you must be overly macho, but you also must show femininity because male being feminine, bad. Female
hmm
being masculine, bad. And that's why you see those stereotypes in a lot of movies, is because it's that reinforcement of heteronormative roles and how deferring from them, especially in the olden days, meant that you were taboo, you were bad, you were awful, you were the villain.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize how integrated that like the homophobia, the transphobia, the general heterosexism was just put into our society, and
hmm
um, it's taught from a very very young age to people that like queer equals bad.
Yeah. And unless you study history, queerness in history, um, a lot of people think, oh, it's always, humans have always been like this. Humans have always been like, anti-gay, and it's like, no, no, this is new. This is the past couple of centuries. This
Mhm.
isn't old news. Queer people, haven't been persecuted throughout all of time. There
Yeah.
are a lot of cultures and societies historically that celebrated their queer people, or had people that were queer that ruled their civilizations.
Hmm.
I mean, you've got Alexander the Great that conquered half the world, who is queer. And you can't say that no, they don't exist. And then you also have like Greek heroes like Achilles, who is definitely very queer, and people are still like, no, he was just friends.
Just friends.
He was
um,
definitely
and I
just
mean,
friends.
if you are in the colonized Americas, the people who originally lived here and whose land this is, um, they they've made a blanket term which is two spirit, which like that is a very very in depth conversation. But I mean, to put it frankly, two spirit is an identity that the people whose land this is put out for white people's sake. But in some of the tribes and stuff of this land, like being queer was considered a blessing, and made you a bit of a better person because you had like one of the ones that I've heard from one region was that when you were a queer person, it was having two spirits in one body. So being able to see things from more than one perspective, and it made you higher up. It made you a more spiritual person, who could see the world a little bit better. And like I thought that was beautiful, um, but like the only reason why queers are underrepresented, the way they are, it mostly has to do with the fact that when people colonized lands, they brought their religions, and people who translated books made it to kind of fit their agendas. And one day, somebody was like, "Don't like the fact that a boy likes another boy, so we're just gonna slightly alter these wordings to make it so that like gay equals bad."
Yeah. I mean, I might be completely wrong in this, but from what I know off the top of my head,
Mhm.
the King James Bible was created because King James was very gay and had a male suitor, and he pissed off the church, so he funded a new Bible to be made. And in retaliation for that, they made that Bible the first one that mentioned in that Old Testament that man shall not lie with man. That
Yeah,
thing, that whole thing came about because of that, because of a gay king.
yeah,
Because originally the translation is that man shall not be a pedophile.
yeah. It's man shall
You
not lay
had
with boy.
yeah, because you had like the ancient Greeks and Romans and stuff that the pedophilia was rampant in those societies. So that's when like that sort of thing came about.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, 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 no,
Yeah,
none of that.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, and because of that, the King James and the New International Version came from that, and like all these religious texts, and then the church started pushing that, and now gay people are, considered less than around the world.
Yeah. Yep. Um, and it's like what DL said. Like the verse was about the Greeks having young.
Yep.
Yep. So like that's what it comes down to. Is it's not what it is, and like it's funny the amount of people who I've had come up to me and preach the Bible about like why to defend what they've done, and I'm like, I've read that book, bitch. I've read a couple different versions of that book, and I can tell you right now that there's things that they say are much worse that you're doing, like divorce. Like if you want to, if like I always let that argument, like, hey, do you want to protect the sanctity of marriage? Outlaw divorce. Like I mean,
I don't like
murder will
that.
there will be more murder. I can guarantee you if you outlaw divorce, but like you're protecting the sanctity of marriage.
It's so dumb, and
Yeah.
that just it blows my mind that like this like sort of domino effect happened because of different things that like the church has done, and
Mhm.
because our world is so imbued with zealotry.
Hmm.
Uh, we have all these problems with queer people,
Yeah.
um, where it's like illegal to be queer in some places,
Hmm.
punishable by death.
Yep.
Uh, it's just absolutely insane to me
Yep.
when that it might have been a bit better, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. And it's a movie that really addresses that topic really well. I feel is have you ever seen the movie Saved?
No, I don't think
It's
so.
it's got Mandy Moore, one of the most underrated actresses of our times. Macaulay Culkin's in it, and quite a few other people that are actually pretty good. The girl who's in Sucker Punch and The Hunger Games, she's the one with the axe. She plays Joanna, I think, but I can't remember what her actual name is. Um, but that
No idea.
movie tackled so much stuff because um, this isn't really ruining a lot of the plot, but the story basically becomes what it is based off the fact that like one girl tries to save her gay boyfriend by having sex with him because it was God's will. It makes more sense in the movie, I swear. But um, so she has sex with him one time, gets pregnant, and he gets taken to like a conversion style camp. But that's the start of like of this movie that kind of sets everything in motion, and it's about her questioning what she has been taught to learn in an evangelical high school slash church. And they do a really, really good job at addressing some really, really tough topics that
Hmm.
people don't necessarily want to do because they have to. Like the way the story is made, they can't not talk about them.
Address it. Yeah.
Um, and one of my favorite scenes in the thing is um, this one girl while they're fighting takes a Bible and throws it at the other girl, saying God died for your love. And she picks it up and she goes, "This is not a weapon."
Oh. Oh.
And
Oh.
so like obviously she just got physically hit with a book, but
But I mean that.
she's also making that metaphor that like the Bible isn't supposed to be a weapon. It's supposed to be a thing that teaches you rules and morals about loving each other and being a better you. But so many people have turned it into a weapon.
Yeah.
And like I think this is
Well.
a movie I propose to watch with you. It doesn't have like the queer characters in it are very much so side characters.
Hmm.
And I know that we want to put a focus on it, but it just like I heavily recommend you watch it for your podcast because
I mean, we've already done a straight movie at this point, so like we can, or a couple straight movies at this point, so we can probably slide that one in too.
I mean
Um,
it's a solid movie.
yeah, that I I definitely feel that one because I definitely also grew up in like the church,
Hmm.
and all that. So like learning, being able to go and research and like learn on my own a lot of stuff, is really what pulled me away from that.
Yeah.
Um, and my mother just blames it on college.
College. Are you kidding?
Direct quote once was, "You're only liberal because you went to college," and I'm like, "Is it because I'm educated?"
Yeah, right. I like that's my always my favorite argument is I'm like, so you're saying being educated means that I'm gonna be a liberal because I know more. Perfect, awesome, love it.
Wait,
That's my favorite.
literal,
That
literal thing that
moment, the
happened.
moment that like conservatives admit that the reason why you have the views you have is because you're educated. Amazing. um,
Yeah.
we also had like I've had this conversation with a couple people about like one of my favorite arguments you can make in a movie about gender is the movie Wally, because if you start talking about gender in the movie Wally, it is a trap that they can
Yeah.
go in, because you talk about Wally and you go, oh, so like Eve and Wally are non-binary, and people go, oh no, they're a boy and a girl, and you're like, well, no, they're not. They're non-binary. Like, oh, but like Eve's the girl and Wally's the boy. I'm like, but they don't have genitals, so you're saying that your gender is defined by who you are on the inside, not your gender. And they're like, well, no. I'm like, oh, so then they're non-binary. Well, no, they're a boy and a girl. Oh, so like it's more about the inside than the outside. No, because and I'm like, it's a trap that they cannot win. They either have to admit one or the other with their arguments, and it's my favorite because you just get them in a circle where it's like, okay, now like now that you've established that you've sexualized a robot, um, go home and think about what you've done.
So many.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not against anybody sexualizing a robot because the entire vibrator industry would be done without that. But like, choose your
That's how
battle.
they get out of the argument. They're like, no, Eve is the girl because she looks like a vibrator. That's why she's the girl.
She's the girl because she's a vibrator, and Wally's obviously a boy because he doesn't look like a vibrator.
Yeah, he just uses one, so he's gay.
Oh. That's like it's funny. I've had the conversation like being a demisexual and like not being a very sexual person. Having conversations with a friend, they're like, "What do you think your friends do when like they're alone?" I'm like, "I don't know, knit."
Yeah, read a book.
Together,
That's what I do.
they let sit with their
Yes.
they sit with their significant other, and then they wait until the page flips. I don't know.
They sit there quietly together because haven't you had friends and sat there quietly for the friends?
That to me is
That's
like
what I feel.
that's like to me the ultimate sign of being a really good friend with somebody is being able to do something in silence beside them. Where like and like me and my roommate do that all the time. He'll play League, I'll play Switch. We won't really say anything, and then one of us will like swear because we died because of some bullshitty bullshit, and it's like, you okay?
Yeah. Those are the best. Or just like, veg out on the couch.
Yeah.
Watching TV.
Yep.
I feel that.
Is there any really good? I don't think there's really any good TV. Like, I know we've talked a lot about gay movies, but I can't think of a really good gay TV show with us right now, other than like, Drag Race UK.
So one that I've been like, it's animated, but Steven Universe is great.
Yeah. Isn't that done though?
Huh?
I thought they finished it. Like they wrapped it all.
Yeah,
up.
they finished that.
Yeah.
Please Like Me.
Yes.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I have heard good things.
But again, Please Like Me's done. It's so good.
Love Victor. So good. I love it. Love Victor. Always back to Love Simon for me.
Love Victor.
Love Victor is so I enjoyed it a lot.
What's that Dom show that Netflix made? And season 2 just came out. It's got the ginger kid.
The Ginger Kid.
Bonded. Bonded is a queer TV show that's out right now, which is like really good. That one's really good, and I appreciate them making fun of 50 Shades of Grey. Because if your premise off of what like king culture is 50 Shades of Grey,
You're wrong.
You're not ready yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen the second season for that one yet. I did enjoy the first season. What are some other queer TV shows? It's not a TV show, but a YouTube series that has 5 episodes and it's done. But The Gay and Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo, literally one of my favorite things. So funny, so good. I make everyone watch it. Let's see, more TV shows. One Day at a Time it's not queer. It's not. It
doesn't have a focal point.
Only queer, but it has a lot of queerness to it, which is great.
Yeah. In that same light, you could say Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because Rosa's bisexual.
Oh yeah.
Like unapologetically.
Yeah, which
and
is
Captain
wonderful. And Captain Holt, literally one of my favorite characters. I am like, there's just such so torn about it being like, a show about police officers, considering the climate, the political climate right now, and uh, how many deaths have happened in the Black community because of police officers. Um,
Well,
and that show, like, having such a good queer representation, uh, it's
one of
very
the
hard to deal with.
one of the things that I really um, will always stand by and stuff too is like the amount of people who are like, oh, like all this stuff has been happening to the Black community. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not been happening just recently. It's always
It
been like this.
it's
It's been
always been like
worse.
that.
You
Yeah,
just give a shit now because it's trending on
yeah.
Facebook and shit. Which I was actually talking to somebody else about this. Like, if you were a white person and you are trying to support the Black Lives Matter movement, do not use the Black Lives Matter hashtag. You can put BLM in your stuff. That's great. Don't use the hashtag, um, because unless you're amplifying a black voice or you're providing like material from a black source kind of thing, what you're doing is you're taking the hashtag, which can be used to provide information and stuff like that, and basically forcing a bunch of people who are looking into supporting black creators or looking into the black content and coming to like a white person's channel who's just like,
Yeah.
by the way, like I have a safe space for black people. Like, great. You can definitely put like Black Lives Matter in your stuff. Just don't use the hashtags because like this was really addressed when everybody was switching their profiles to pure black and using the Black Lives Matter hashtag. All the like news articles and the educational information was getting drowned out by
Mhm.
allies who are showing how they wanted to support, but the way that they were supporting was actually doing harm. So just like remember, and this is the same for like, and it's coming up right away, like it's gonna be coming up and stuff like that. When it comes to like trans awareness and like Trans Month and Pride Month and stuff like that, if you're an ally, you can definitely put the text that's in the like hashtags that are used to support it. Don't actually use the hashtag though, because you are going to be taking away from the minority voices you're trying to support. So just like keep that in mind. Don't make your voice louder than the people you're trying to help.
Yeah. It's about, lifting those voices up,
Mm-hmm.
and using your privilege to lift those voices instead of,
Yeah,
making your voice what's heard.
yeah. Like if I have to have one more ally correct me on like how to like be a better queer ally, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that I know better than you.
Yeah. I also, like, I've seen a thing like, specifically Twitch, like, people that don't identify as queer using the LGBT tag as well.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, that tag is great, because when I search that tag, I'm looking for queer people to support. I'm not looking for, you know, a straight person, that doesn't identify as queer at all, but is, having a safe space for queer people. Like, that's great. Have your safe space. The tag, I'm looking for queer people.
Yeah.
Um, it, you know,
Like I know, and the part this is another part of the reason. There's a couple of reasons why I've started being more cautious about this, but I don't really raid after my streams random people anymore, unless
hmm
either I have vetted them or somebody who I'm close to in my community has vetted them. Because the amount of times that I've either gone and rated somebody who, after watching like 5 minutes of content, was like, nope, I don't like this vibe, or like I've rated somebody who was like, oh yeah, we want to raid like a queer creator doing the same thing, and the person is like, oh, I'm not gay, I just like really support them, and I'm like,
yeah,
like, but you like you now have seen like lived an example of like you taking away from a queer artist, so like let's take a learning opportunity here. But it's also their stream, so I'm like, I'm not gonna call you out in front of everybody, but like maybe I'll shoot you a whisper later and be like, so here's what you did wrong, but thank you, but no.
yeah. It's just, it's one of those things, and I get people trying to help, and I appreciate it. But I just do a little more looking and thinking, and just like critically thinking, about what you're doing and how you're trying to, help underrepresented communities.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it comes to what we've said before. amplify voices, don't speak over them.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I have a real like struggle with the podcast a lot, because it's a podcast. This movie's gay. It's from the title you can tell. It's like, there are going to be jokes, and it's going to be like, we're just doing a fun thing. I'm introducing the whole concept of it is I'm introducing my straight friend to gay movies.
Hmm?
Um, and I have a problem a lot. And this is the reason I have a lot of guests a lot, because I identify, as a gay white person. Uh, the gender thing for me is, a little different. I look, I look masculine,
Mm-hmm.
so I tend to present as masculine.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like I'm concerned, overall, I don't really care for gender. Um, so like just for a comfort thing for most people, I do present as masculine. Um, so I have a lot of trouble. Like, I don't want to do movies that have queer characters, especially like super important movies, that have queer characters that I don't identify with, mainly because I want someone that identifies with them to be able
Yep.
to talk about those, and come from a place of knowledge and a place
Yeah.
uh, of like valuing those characters in a different way, because I want those characters to be introduced to the world, like, legitimately and with authority.
Yep.
Whereas I can't speak on those, like
Yep.
me as myself, I cannot speak on those. So like,
Yep.
um you know we have a real problem. A lot of queer movies that we have nowadays anyway are very white, and they're very a lot of them are very gay as well. There's not as many lesbian movies. There's not as many trans movies. There's not as many black queer movies
Mm-hmm.
or other people of color. So, like, when I'm doing those episodes on the podcast, I really try to bring in someone that is of those communities
Yep.
to be able to speak on those characters in those movies, because that's what they're representing. And, like, it's a struggle because, like, on one hand, you're like, oh, these movies are for everyone, but on the other hand, I'm like, no, they're for everyone, and I want them to be for everyone, and I want people to watch all these movies, but I don't feel comfortable speaking about, the experience of a black trans man, because I don't have that experience.
And like, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit on this one.
Totally fine.
I don't think queer movies should be for everybody. Um,
Oh,
I think people should be allowed to watch them.
yeah.
But I don't think they should be made for everybody in the same way that
Oh
like
no.
a gay bar shouldn't be made for everybody. It is primarily first and foremost like a queer space for queer people. And if you as a straight person go in there and like the queer bar just doesn't feel right for you, it's not the vibe for you, that don't fucking matter. It's not made for you. If you can't
Yeah.
respect the space, you don't need to stay there.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I wonder, we're in agreement there.
yeah.
I don't mean that they're for everyone and that
Yeah.
people that aren't queer should be making those movies. No, absolutely, they should be queer people. But I think everyone should watch the movies just because it is good to see a viewpoint that is not your own.
Yeah.
Um,
And like
that's
I'm
yeah,
always cautious because I feel like if you make the idea that like, oh, like a queer space should be for everybody, they're gonna lose the point of the matter that is like no. Like if you have an opinion that this isn't quite for you, it doesn't fucking matter. It's not made for you. So stop thinking about it. Because the thing
yeah,
is, whenever you put that option out there, even though people with common sense know better, the people who are usually the problems don't and will be like, well, it's supposed to be for everybody. It's like, no, it's not. It's like when you listen to music that is, for example, made by black creators, if you don't like it because it doesn't feel white enough for you, like go fuck yourself. It's not for you.
you're not the target audience.
Exactly, Adams. Like,
uh,
like when you had all those moms who were like, oh, like this white, like you had these white suburban moms being like, oh, this like music, this rap feels like a little too crass for me, and like, it's like it's not made for you. Fuck off.
Yeah, it's not made for you. You're not the target audience. You can enjoy it if you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Great. You're still not the target audience.
Yeah. So stop trying to put your voice into something that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah,
Like
I do agree with that.
it's when I go full Britney to like people where like I don't know if you've ever seen the most popular girls in school, the
I
show.
still have not.
It's
I've
hilarious.
seen a lot of it just through short clips and memes,
Yeah.
but I haven't like watched the whole thing.
There's a character in it called Brittany Murphy who I really relate to, except instead of getting mad at some French bitch, it's about getting mad at people for like being stupid. um,
Well, it's this like whole thing where people, they feel like they're the main character in the world. They're the only one that exists. They're conscious and no one else is,
yeah,
and everything should be made for them. So if they see something that isn't made for them, they're like, "What?
yeah. Like
Why does this exist?"
if
It's
you're
like it's
gonna
not for you.
if you're gonna make me have NPC energy for your life, you better start paying me because the law
Hmm.
says that at minimum for me to be your NPC energy, you require to give me $11 an hour. So,
11. I'm gonna need 25.
oh,
I'm trying to.
I said minimum. um,
I've
but
worked too damn long, too damn long, and I'm too entertaining to be $11. I need 25.
and that's in freedom dollars, not even maple leaflets.
Freedom dollars. That's the yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In this economy, 25 freedom dollars an hour.
In this economy, they better be.
um, but yeah, like I just Uh, and I mean another thing too, and this pertains to like books, movies, TV shows. Just because you're the main character doesn't mean you're a good person or you're the hero.
Yeah,
People choose
that
people to be the main character.
100%.
People choose main people like characters to be the main characters because they want people to empathize with them and see things from their view, not because they're the hero. And I can think of multiple things where that is very true. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which we'll be watching. I will go into this in depth. Trust me.
Yes.
Rent. The main perspective of Rent, even though it's multiple people's stories, the person is not a good person. They are not the best person. They're just the one who's best able to provide the storyline. Like, arguably, I guess, the best person in Rent is Angel.
Oh, Angel.
I'm almost debating to say it's not arguable because Angel's fantastic. Um,
Angel's incredible.
in How I Met Your Mother, they are not great people. They are not heroes. Ted Mosby is an asshole.
He's the worst.
Um, I think the best person in How I Met Your Mother is the mom who you don't meet till the end.
The mother.
Or Marshall. Marshall may be the second best because he's childlike and full of glee. But even then, that's debatable at times. But yeah,
I like Lily is Marshall's partner, right?
yeah. But Lily is a manipulative person and has
Mm-hmm.
many problems that she puts onto other people. And that's just a fact. I love Lily in the series. I think she's great. I think she's awesome. I think she's wholesome, but also she's a.
This isn't tea, but it might as well be.
um,
Um,
the entire cast of Friends are awful
oh
people,
my god. I
except
mean, even Phoebe. I love Phoebe. She does do some not great things.
like I think people don't understand this. Being the main character of a story doesn't mean you're good. You're just the villain we empathize with.
Yeah. And there are so many people that are so narcissistic or so like self-centered that they don't realize that like, other people exist for themselves.
Yeah. And this
Not everyone
is
exists for you.
part of the reason why I like Marvel and like Marvel stories a little bit better than DC is Marvel characters aren't afraid to admit they're selfish. They're bad. They have faults
Hmm.
where a lot of the DC heroes don't do that unless they get into their like dark stuff, like when they get into the Injustice series. When they get Batman's one of the few series that's really good about it, where they're like, oh, like he's better than like Batman's not a good hero, and they address it. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like when you look back at the shows, they're really bad. Not by requesting it. If you stick around in the community, we can discuss it later, Rip. Um,
Uh, yeah, a lot of those shows when you look at them with the lens of today, and you're like, "Oop, that's not great." And there's a lot of queer movies that have those moments too, like Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
oh, such a good movie though.
It Same. A lot of because we as a society have grown in our terminology, and things that used to be okay to say are no longer okay to say. So a lot of that has changed. So you look back on those and you're like, ooh, that's not a good moment.
And
Um,
I'd even be able to like this is just like me again being like my soapboxy self, which I tend to do a lot. They weren't okay to say. We just accepted it. Um,
yeah,
and I mean, I like to say this a lot to people: ignorance is an excuse.
yeah. I mean,
You
they use that argument with a lot of things historically, and you're like, no, there are historically there are contemporaries of those people that do and say these terrible things that are like, this person's fucking awful because they're doing insane these things, and they're like, no, they're a great philosopher or poet or
it was just
politician or
it was
whatever. And
just
it's
okay
like,
at the time. It's like no, that's not an excuse.
yeah,
Like that's like people who are like, oh, like this person was a great person and like they had slaves. And they're like, oh, but that was acceptable at the time. Fuck no,
it
it's
was.
not. Like that I'm not excusing slavery for any reason. Go fuck
Nope.
yourself.
Exactly. And you can't say that, oh, it was okay at that time too, because you literally had a lot of people at the time that were also like, no, do
Yeah,
not do that. That is bad.
yeah, like
Just historically, people have always been like that. You can't say that times have changed, and this is going back to like the gay thing being accepted. You can't say times have changed and now there are more gay people because gay people are being accepted. It's like, no, there was a brief period of history where gay people were persecuted and not accepted, and that's turning around now.
yeah,
Sort of. So like, historically people still understood the difference between something that was right and wrong, in that sense, or something that was like unjust. They
mm-hmm.
still understood those things.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of people can't like cope with that.
yeah.
Um, especially like
It's
especially when you bring religion into it.
yeah,
Uh,
and like
and I say that because I literally had gotten into an argument about a guy or with a guy that said that he doesn't think people could be have morals without Christianity, and I'm like, yeah, people
yeah,
can have morals without Christianity. They can have ethics without Christianity. They can know that like stealing something is wrong,
yeah.
without the Bible telling them so. Like
I
that's not
would
the end all be
I would
all.
need to find the source for this because I remember reading it a while ago, but I think they found that like generally people who do like atrocious crimes like grand thefts, purposeful endangerment, homicide, you usually have a religious affiliation opposed to people who are have no religious affiliation, proving that just because you're religious doesn't make you a good person.
Yeah, just because you're religious does not make you a good person. Um, some of the best people are not religious
Yep.
and or are just spiritual, and like that's okay. And
Yep.
there are great people that are religious,
Yeah.
and that's also great. Uh, but the factor that I'm talking about here is that religion is not what makes you a good person.
Correct. Um, and like the one thing I always find it interesting, especially when the whole like, well, in the time or back then they da da da. I'm like, so are you telling me that like every single time that like a lawmaker makes a new law about a change to something, your entire moral compass changes? Like, are you saying in like the places where weeds become legal, you went from like, oh, weed is bad, drugs bad, like da 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 da,
Yeah.
and then like the minute it was legal, you're like, drugs are okay. Like you have to wait till the bill passed to be like, okay, moral compass changed, so like, okay, this law passed, okay. Like, are you one of those people who like, okay, social assistance is awful, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna put it into a social assistance program, and like, okay, like helping others is good now because the law says so.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people cling to things like that as their moral compass. Um, Golden Girls is 30 years old and still more accepting than some. Oh, that is so true. Um, People that cling to these to like laws and stuff like that as their moral compass, it's like these laws were created first of all by a bunch of white men, and second of all they were created for these specific situations,
Yep.
like, you know, of the times, and a lot of them, you know, a lot of laws are created through lobbying and
Yep.
some not so great things. So you saying that, you know, weed is bad is because, you know, the paper industry really didn't want hemp to be a thing, like, or, you know, they wanted to lock up a bunch of people of color, um to get, you know, some free labor. It's, you gotta critically think about things like that, um and be able to discern what feels right and wrong to you. And I talk to so many people and I'm like, I don't think it's honestly, I mean, it is kind of hard to be a good person, but it's really not. Like, it's not. Is your action going to hurt someone? Is it going to hurt a reasonable person? If it's going to hurt a reasonable person, maybe your action is wrong and don't do it.
Yep.
Are you forced to do this action? Okay, then we're in some moral gray ground there. That's where you're really like finding your ethics and stuff.
Yep.
And you know, it's not that difficult to discern all of these things.
And I mean, another problem with like when you think about laws and morals and stuff like that is like laws are made to be black and white, and the world is not black and white.
Not
Like
at all.
even, and I'll put it this way, which like sounds kind of awful, but it was a colorblind person who told me this. They said, you know, I'm colorblind, but the world, like even I see that the world has shades of gray. Um, we were really drunk at the time, so this probably sounded way better at the time because we were both in like mood. But like it did resonate with me because we were having a conversation with them about how, um, for them the closest that they get to see is in color is during sunrise and sunset when everything is more gradient and has a different like lighting to it. Um,
Oh, wow.
and they were like, that's the closest to color I get to see. And it was just like a moment we were having. And they said, you know, people think that I see the world in black and white, but the world has so many shades of gray. Um, I don't know. It just like, it's always hit me in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way. Because they were explaining kind of, you know, that people kind of try and make things as simple as possible by saying, you know, people who are colorblind only see the world in black and white, and but they see so much more. And I think that really resonates to a lot of things that, you know, people like to try and see things on a binary scale, for everything. But the world is so much more different than that. Like everything's on a spectrum, and you need to take that spectrum for what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, Golden Girls. That show is so good.
um,
uh,
I love how Golden Girls is basically considered like a gay TV show, even though I think they only have one episode with a gay character in it.
I think they have a couple,
Because
right?
I think one of them, like their family members, is gay, and they
Yeah, I think.
basically like put the smack down.
Aww. Um. Yeah, I think a couple. I am not. I haven't seen Golden Girls 30 times, so I can't speak with any authority on it. I think only people that have seen Golden Girls 30 times can do so. Um,
I have my shows that I watch yearly. Charmed is one of the shows I watch almost yearly. Drawn Together, which
did you say
is
Charmed?
Charmed. Yep. Drawn
Wow,
Together, I
yes.
watch every couple of years. And like every time I watch it, I'm like, ooh, more and more each time. um, Clone High, I watch on a very regular basis.
Clone High. What is that?
Clone High, um,
Blanche did have
is
a gay brother.
yes.
That is true.
So Clone High,
Um,
it's getting rebooted, which I'm super excited about. But it's about a whole bunch of teenage clones, um, that like come
oh,
back, and then uh, most importantly, Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Buffy is a good one.
which had
My
some of the best queer representation in it for a hot minute, except for one problem, which I'll bring up. Other than and then like they made it a trauma story, which they do a lot in queer storylines. But before it was a trauma story, Tara and Willow had a really good relationship, except for the fact that they wrote out the fact that like maybe Willow's bisexual by just making her a lesbian, which by the way, like we've come a ways from this, but bi erasure is still a thing. Just because
yeah.
somebody of the opposite sex doesn't mean their character became gay. They can be bi or pan. That is an option. So like don't just default to that because it devaluates that a lot.
I mean, people do that with actresses too and stuff. The actress that played Sookie in True Blood, she's bi, but she's married to a man. So people are like, you know, she's straight, and she's not. She's bi. She's still bi. She's always going to be bi.
Yep.
As long as that she identifies that way.
Yep.
Golden Girls for a second. Yes, there's Blanche's gay brother. There's also an episode where someone has a friend come and stay, and the friend is a lesbian, and they think the friend is in love with Rose, or the friend might be in love with Rose. I don't know, but she's lesbian.
Yep.
So that's it. There are a couple. There are at least a couple.
Yeah.
I think there are more.
They also
Very
did,
gay show.
They also did an episode on the Confederate flag, which like to me is very good evidence that like the fact that the Confederate flag is an awful thing has been around for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like another reason why you can't use the argument we didn't know better. Golden Girls is over 30 years old and they fucking knew better.
I'm literally from the South, and like, yeah, that's so dumb to me. So dumb. Yeah. Clone High. I need to check that out. I haven't seen that one. We just rewatched Golden Girls. We rewatched Will and Grace.
Yeah.
There's another one that we rewatch every once in a while. Oh, Schitt's Creek. Schitt's Creek. There's another gay show. It's over now, but very gay. Very lovely.
Adamantly
beautiful,
queer
beautiful
and like
show.
done well. Like the one thing that I really like about Schitt's Creek that Dan Levy did well is queerness is very much part of the storyline, but it's not the focal point all of the time. And it's not based off the trauma.
Yeah, it's not trauma. It's not. They never bring trauma into it, and it's beautiful. It's just people being queer and being alive,
And like any trauma that's brought into it is also straight people trauma. Like
yeah.
relationship problems are relationship problems universally, and that's how they treated it. They didn't be like gay relationship problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that show so much.
If anything, I would say the queer relationships in that is more wholesome than the straight relationships.
Oh, Moira.
David.
It's definitely one of my favorite shows. I put it on all the time. I rewatch it so many times. What's another queer TV show? I did mention One Day at a Time. I love that that's a remake and that they have queer characters in it, and they do have like the queer trauma, but it's handled so beautifully.
Yep.
And it makes me sob actively watching that show. I don't know if you've seen it. Literally, like some of the finales, I just tears streaming down my eyes every single fucking time I've seen it.
Meet the Fosters.
It's just so good. Huh?
Meet the Fosters is another queer show.
Yes. What is it? There's another one that's British that I keep trying to watch, but I never get into it.
Queer as Folk. I don't like Queer as Folk, but I appreciate it for what it is.
Is it Easton?
Oh, EastEnders.
Easton, yeah. I keep trying to watch it. I never get into it. Yeah, there's Queer as Folk. There's two of them, I think.
There's the UK and there's the North American.
Yeah. There's also Pose. We haven't even touched on Pose.
I haven't
Gorgeous
watched those
show.
because it doesn't stream anywhere up here.
Oh no.
I've been trying to watch
We
it
need.
so much. Legendary, by the way, if and I'm gonna make this like very, very clear to everybody. If you have not watched Legendary, you're watching the wrong reality TV show because Legendary is hands down better than Drag Race. Also, Legendary discusses where a lot of queer language and queer isms come from because ball culture is where a lot of drag and gay culture take
Mhm.
their isms. And I mean, I've gone off on this, I think, in like as a viewer in one of your pods. Don't
Yeah,
use realism about cis people looking cis. You don't understand the language. Like, it bothers me so
yeah.
much.
It was our Paris is Burning episode, which is
Yes.
also an incredible movie that everyone absolutely needs to see,
Yeah.
and a absolutely heartbreaking
Yeah.
documentary.
Like,
Because you know by the end of it, some of those queens are dead,
yeah.
um, because of the world.
We should arrange a night mess. Maybe we can do it in the Discord and have everybody chill out. But like for example, a lot of queer language comes from black women, and like you understand that
Hmm.
if you're in the black culture, that like, or like if you're in the ball culture, pardon me, that so a lot of our language comes from what comes from ball, and ball comes from a lot of queer and trans two spirit and BIPOC people, specifically the
Hmm.
BIPOC people, specifically the black people, even more so in that. And their language and the way their attitudes are and stuff like that come from emulating stronger women of their own cultures. So, like, the fact that ball culture is a lot of trans and queer black people, and they're emulating the people that they aspire to be, which come from, the black women in their life. A lot of the terminology we use stems from black culture and gets whitewashed until queer people claim it as their own, um, just through the grapevine of the way the world works. So, like, that's why it's super important you don't just use stuff you see in queer cinema and stuff without knowing where it's come from. And like my best example is when people say like, "Oh, like you if you go to a cis woman in a business suit and go, "Oh, you're giving us businesswoman realness." What you don't understand is in a ball culture setting when they are saying like, "Oh, she's presenting businesswoman realness." That category comes from the idea that trans women and queer men are going in a category where the category's theme is if you were a cis woman walking down the street, is that what people would assume you were? Like a cis woman who's a businesswoman walking down the street. It's about the idea of passing being something. So when you're calling a cis woman presenting businesswoman realness, what you're saying, and you don't realize you're saying is, "Oh my God, you're such a like a cis businesswoman that you look just like a cis businesswoman." Nobody would be able to tell that you're a cis businesswoman, which is why it's super important before you like put like anybody's culture into your lingo. Know what the hell you're saying, because when I hear somebody say stuff like that, I'm like, you're an ignorant idiot. And again, not your fault. You're just ignorant, but that doesn't give you a pass.
Yeah, I mean, we also need to acknowledge that in the queer community, specifically the white queer community, a lot of the terminology does come from the ball culture, and a lot of younger white gay men not necessarily know where that comes from and will use this terminology,
Yeah.
and not acknowledge its history, and where it came from and the cultures it came from. Um, so it turns from like celebrating this into sort of an appropriation kind of moment.
And that's exactly
Um,
what it is. And I think the key thing of appropriation is when you take somebody else's culture and claim it as your own, which like white cis gay people do a lot.
yeah,
And I don't think people realize like that's what they're doing, but like here you are. Um, But it's important to know your queer history and know where your references come from, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's a good thing to acknowledge.
I want to see if I can find this clip, and I'm going to put it on here. Because it's one of my favorite things of like why it's important to know your history in like a more comedic way. Okay, I need to pause this before it plays. So for those of you, one second, I'm going to switch this over. For those of you who don't know about Stonewall, Stonewall is a very important part of queer history, because it's essentially what gave us our rights. That's what it is.
Are you playing something from the Stonewall movie that came out that no one has watched? Because
It's awful. No,
yeah.
but this actually
Okay.
involves like why it's very important that you know what the fuck you're talking about. Um, because otherwise you end up like Derek Barry, who they had to have this conversation. I love how you know exactly what I'm playing.
Yes.
1 second, I just need to shrink this down so people can see it.
I'm gonna watch it too. Hold on.
You know what I mean?
Why don't you tell everybody what that is?
That was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody
They were
was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
I'm watching it again because every single time I see it, it makes me laugh.
like when people don't know what Stonewall is. You know what I mean?
Why don't you tell everybody what that is?
That was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody
They were
was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was
Nobody
killed.
was killed at Stonewall.
Okay, so for people who don't understand, nobody was killed at Stonewall. Like legitimately, nobody was killed at Stonewall. People were beaten. People were arrested. Nobody was killed at Stonewall. But Stonewall is, yes, she does. Stonewall is super important part of queer history because it is. It's when queer people had enough and fought back. But nobody was killed at Stonewall. They were arrested and beaten, not killed.
I mean, there were a lot of people, a lot of trans people around the time that did die due to police brutality. We will acknowledge that, but
Yeah.
the Stonewall event itself did not have anyone that was, murdered at that bar.
Yes. And anybody who knows queer history thinks that moment's hilarious because of that reason. Because
Yeah.
like I love Derek Barry, bless their heart, and they're trying to like I just appreciate that they're trying to talk about how it's so important to know your history, and then like immediately fucks it up in the first 10 seconds. But the movie Stonewall is really a good example of that because they're like the first brick was thrown by this generic white guy, and it's like no, it was everybody is aware that a black trans woman threw the first brick, and it was black cross-dressers and trans women and queer men who kind of led the charge on that. It wasn't until after that riot had started that everybody else kind of got involved. Also, a lesbian was also involved in the starting of Stonewall, because
Yeah, was it?
I can't remember her name right now. I should really.
I want to
remember
say
it.
a name, but I'm pretty sure I have the wrong name.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I don't want to give the wrong information, but essentially, like, as always, like if you want something done right, get trans women of color and lesbians involved because they'll make sure it's done right the first time. And that's the history of Pride Parade.
I can't say her name, mainly because I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Stormy Dealer. It's a butch lesbian. She's a butch lesbian that was a bouncer there, I believe.
Yeah.
And she got in a scuffle with the police, and that's what sort of sparked it. And she's kind of forgotten a lot.
But like she's important, but that's exactly like queer erasure of our own queer people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's important to remember that stuff. because it is. And like thing that people don't really realize about Stonewall is like Stonewall was our safe space that we paid the mafia for, and the mafia made a lot of money off of gay people by offering protection. But even then, the police were allowed to raid us every once in a while, just to like keep the peace. And then yeah, what happened is basically queer people were like, we don't need no mafia protection anymore because it's not working. Fuck this, and fought back against the police.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
then you watch the movie Stonewall, and they're like, white people!
Stonewall's literally, the movie was whitewashed. I have not seen it. I refuse to see it. I'm not going to watch it for the podcast. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because it was whitewashed, and I don't care for it.
Yeah, I've heard Transparent's really good, too. I haven't really watched it, but I've also heard that there is some problems with it as well. But I've been told, overall, it does more good than it does bad.
I haven't seen that one either.
Yeah.
Is that the one I'm thinking of? Hold on, let me see.
They had the person.
Oh, yeah, it's because the lead is
straight cis guy.
Yeah, also just not a good person.
Yeah.
So that's why I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
He's an ass just all around.
Yeah.
Is it Jessica Walters who plays the voice of Walter of Mallory on Archer, and was, in Arrested Development and stuff, is just an ass for her too, and I love her too. Yeah, he's just an ass. So I haven't watched that because of that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, they did well with it, and some people can watch it and have a connection to it. But that's why I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
So it's great that we have this queer media, but there's so much queer media that is made or dominated by straight people that, I refuse to watch.
What's his name? He was in Glee. Darren
Criss
did something that was really awesome, is that he has, like, he's played a queer person and he queer baits 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But then one day he acknowledged it and went, I have gotten a lot of prestige off of gay roles that should have gone to gay people. So I'm not going to do it anymore. And
yeah,
that, my friends, is how you show accountability, because he did it. It was acceptable at the time, but he acknowledged that the damage it did and made a commitment to not do it anymore. And that's the thing, is a lot of people get this idea that, like, and this happens when somebody says something transphobic, homophobic, some people get so bent out of shape about the idea of being wrong or being perceived as the person who did wrong, that they actually do more damage because they are so focused on not acknowledging the damage that they've done that they don't make a commitment to make it better, and they don't acknowledge the harm they've done. Where if they did that, people would actually forgive them, because nobody gave a shit about Darren Criss when all this went down, and like with the movement to have more queer people do queer roles, because Darren admitted he did wrong and made a commitment to be better and is actually doing it. So
yeah.
If you ever get told that you did something homophobic or transphobic or racist or ableist or anything, stop focusing on trying to justify what you did and start making a commitment to do better and take accountability for your actions, and people will forgive you and get
apologize, acknowledge where you're wrong, take a moment to apologize, and then don't do it again.
Yeah.
Some
people will probably still be mad at you, and that's going to happen, but you can't please everybody. But the majority of people will acknowledge that you're a learning, growing person, because all of us are.
Yeah. Yeah, where we all are. We all, like, a lot of gay people are going to have internalized homophobia. And everyone's going to have, all white people are going to be racist. That's what it is, because society has made us this way.
Yep.
So it's acknowledging those things, and understanding where that's coming from, and being able to apologize and change your behavior and actively work on being a better person. Like I have a queer podcast, and every once in a while I'll say something that's a little internalized homophobic, and I'm like, oh, my bad, that was wrong.
Yeah.
I've said something terrible.
And like me as a person in the gender diverse community, I can tell you right now in my history, I have said some transphobic stuff. I have said some stuff like where I didn't quite understand non-binariness, and now I am non-binary because I was ignorant. Does it justify what I did? No. But I'm a growing human being, and I think denying the fact that I did that is not healthy and does not benefit anybody. Acknowledging that that's the person I was and I've grown from that is a huge thing because it shows a couple things. One, I've taken accountability to change. And two, if I can do it, you can too.
Yeah. It's about growth. Not everyone's going to be, no one's going to be like completely knowledgeable about every issue like immediately from birth. That's just not going to happen. Everyone's going to stumble. Everyone's gonna have moments where they need to learn. That's what it is to be human. And you talked about the Darren Chris thing. Like, I have I have a lot of problems with straight people that are playing gay roles, and I know a lot of people when I have this talk with them, especially actors that are like, "Oh, I want to be able to play any role." I'm like, it's not that you can't play the role, it's should you.
Yep.
Ethically or morally, should you do that? It might be a big job, it might be a big role, it might be a huge break, but is that what you want to be known for, is taking that huge break or that huge role from someone that is queer? And just like, taking that. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. And it's okay to like, want to be able to do any role, but sometimes you shouldn't. And that's why, The Prom, which was a new movie that was a musical that came out recently, and it had what's his face playing James Corden playing a gay man in it. And it's like, this movie just came out like last year. Why are you making a movie in 2020 that has a gay man being played by a straight man? Like, why?
Yep.
There are plenty of very, very talented gay men who would have fit that role perfectly. And instead you cast a straight man who tells a traumatic story about a thing that happens to gay men everywhere, and that being cast out by his family for being gay. And it's like, you have this whole tragic backstory for him about gay history, things that happen in real gay people's lives to this day. And instead of, having a gay man play that role, you're going to have a straight man do it. Ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. It should not have happened.
Yeah. Agreed. And like, it's weird because they actually had the queer character in this story who's actually queer not really focus on the queer aspects of their life. Who would have been more qualified, and also without question was a better singer anyway.
Well, and that's another thing. Whenever if I talk to actors and I'm like, oh, I don't think that straight people should play queer characters, they always like being like, oh, well, should gay people play straight people? And it's like, yeah, because we're forced into the closet since we start our lives.
We've been doing it for a while.
Of course we can play straight people.
Also, like, that wouldn't be as much of an issue if there was more queer roles available for people.
It wouldn't be as much of an issue if there weren't queer roles. It also wouldn't be as much of an issue if people didn't automatically assume that everyone should be straight, cis, white.
Yeah.
If that wasn't the automatic assumption, then it would be an issue.
Yeah.
But it's what the world is right now, so it's not an issue when queer people play straight white roles, or even people of color playing a role that's predominantly done by a white person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love seeing people of color play those roles because it's a different viewpoint and it's beautiful.
Fantastic Four.
And straight white should not be the default.
Like
that
Fantastic
people,
Four, when
you
they
know,
replaced
assume.
the characters with black characters, it was actually really good. Nobody really should have cared because it wasn't an issue. Like I said, my only issue was the fact that they didn't make Susan Storm black too.
Yep, they should have made her black too.
But of course they didn't.
They did not, because they're afraid
Yeah.
of, you know, not having way more white people in a movie than they should.
Yes. That being said, we've hit the 2-hour mark, which I think is probably where we should stop. Even though I could continue this conversation, which we will on your podcast, probably.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about your podcast a bit?
Sure. So my podcast is called This Movie's Gay. I've mentioned it before. It is a show, mostly joking, a little serious sometimes, about queer film. So it's me introducing my straight friend James to gay movies, predominantly movies that I know, which are typically comedy or like that, you know, that we talked about earlier, another gay movie or one of those. It's like raunchy, fun, just sitting down, relaxing, watching a movie. But every once in a while we watch an important film, like Paris is Burning. Or we'll be watching Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is also very important. And I just sort of talk about the movies, we joke about the movies, and some good points are brought up. That's the main thing about the podcast. It's on every service that podcasts are found. And then if you want to watch us live, we have episodes every other Tuesday at 6 p.m. on Twitch. And our episodes for the audio go up on podcasts the following Monday.
When am I coming in again?
You're going to be coming in, let me see, March 30th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time.
So yeah.
We'll be watching Hedwig and the Angry Inch. So next week, not this upcoming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, we're having an episode. I don't remember what we're watching. And then the next day, we're actually going to have a bonus episode with an actor from a movie we've watched before. So that'll be fun to do. It'll be 2 for 1. No, 2 for 2. 2 different podcasts in 1 week.
And then and then later today I'm going to be on Antacid's page, probably in about just under an hour's time, raising some money for a queer charity. So if y'all want to come, y'all can check out Antacid. So there. So Antacid. I'm trying to remember how to spell his name, and I can't.
Antacid.
Right.
Hi, Ant. Love you.
I forgot the H. So check out Ant. We're going to be doing Hollywood Squares there very shortly. Of course, if you watch the podcast, you liked what was happening, you can get so much more simply by going to watch Corwin at their channel right there. We are going to end the night. Oh, right. I forgot to turn these off. So we're gonna go and end the channel. We're gonna go raid somebody who's also LGBT person who's doing just chatting. I will admittedly say I've just started watching them, so I don't know their vibes super well. But they were in this chat earlier, and they were super nice, super awesome. So I'm gonna go raid them anyways. Also, it's my channel, so if you don't like it, I don't care. I do want to thank Corwin for coming in. For those of you who are not visually seeing this, you're hearing it. Their link for their stuff is twitch.tv/Corwinning, spelled CORWYNING. I want to thank everybody for their time, and have a good night.
Thank you for having me, Queen. I enjoyed it.
No problem. So we're going to start the raid. For those of you who are raiding, there is a raid message.
I did actually win a religious victory. The entire world
I love how
were on their knees worshiping.
That's who we're
Megadeth.
raiding, by the way. I hit the wrong command in.
I was waiting for the raid message to copy it.
Right. So we're gonna go raid Puzzled Monkey Tree. If I can spell, what the heck? So there is a raid message for this channel. It is this message right here. If you are following, feel free to use any of the emotes that we offer. If you are not subscribed, literally use any emotes you want. I don't care. And as always, I want to remind everybody that you are valid, you are valuable, and you are so very, very loved. Have a good night. I love you, gamer culture!
I love you, gamer!